Now, from the billing dashboard, let's actually invoice a couple of clients here. We do have this set for highest to lowest WIP sort order at the top here. And I'm going to take All Rise Robes and Tassels here, use them as our first example. Now, let me explain a little bit about the columns here. The first column is the group ID, and that does show the groupings that we've set up in the client setup screen. The client ID, the client name, the net unbilled time value, so this is actual time and WIP less any unapplied progress bill allowances, expenses that are unbilled, released slips, released expenses, which I haven't released any at this point, and then the type of invoice that we're going to generate that we've already talked about a little bit. Now, this is the actual dollar amount I'm going to invoice the time at, and this invoice before tax will be the total invoice, the amount I'm invoicing for the time and the amount that I'm invoicing for the expenses. This last column here shows me the previous balance for the client that I'm currently on. So here I can see that All Rise Robes and Tassels has a $5,900 previous balance. If I check this box, the invoice will reflect that total, that balance due, and I will show some examples of that in a minute. Now, there are some shortcuts you can take here. If you double click on the client ID here, it will take you to the main client setup screen for this client. If I double click on the client name, it will take me to the invoice and payment history for that particular client, the edit view transaction screen for that particular client. If I double click on the net slips, it will release all the time for billing. If I double click on the expenses, if I had some for this client, it would release those. Likewise, I can put those back on hold by double clicking on the released slips or the released expenses. Now, probably the first thing you're going to do when you start to do invoices here is come in and run WIP reports or pre-billing reports. And there are several ways you can do that actually. I'm going to come down to the bottom left here. There's a couple of options here. I'm going to do print all WIP. And here I can tell the system I want to do a detail work in progress report, or I can do a summary report. I can put in a through date here for the last date of slips that I want to show on the report. I'm going to do the summary report first. Now, there are some options here again if I want to filter for a particular billing partner, and I can actually filter by billing partner, by primary staff, by the biller that's assigned. But I'm going to leave this open, and now I do have this set to group by billing partner. So the report will be grouped by billing partner. That is an option, of course. And now I'm going to hit print to print that report. And that's going to give me a report, and it'll preview it on the screen here. But that gives me one line per client. And I'm going to make that a little bit bigger, zoom it a little bit more here. And for billing partner FOL, here's each of his clients in alphabetical order, their hours that they have unbilled currently. This is actually an aging on the value of that. And you can see in my demo here, everything's over 90 days. Total WIP value, WIP allowance. Now this would again would be if I had done progress billings that I hadn't actually cleared time against. So it shows me that pre-billed amount backed out of the current WIP value. Expenses, total billable value. So that is actually total WIP less WIP allowance plus expenses. And also I have a billed and due, so this is their AR balance. So a lot of good quick information here. Now too, at the bottom of each partner's section, since I chose to group by partner, and here's billing partner FOL, and the totals by column for him. So here I can see exactly how much he has. Also at the end of this report, if I go to the last page, I get my grand totals here for the firm as a whole. Okay, I'm going to come back out of that. And now I'm going to do the detail work in progress report. And I do have mine set up here. You see there's some more options here. I'm going to subtotal by work code. I'm also have it set here to have it show me the last 4 invoices for each client. And that'll give me kind of a one-line summary of the last 4 invoices for the client. Now, at this point, if I hit print, it would give me a detailed report for every client that had unbilled time and or unbilled expenses. And I don't want to do that for my example here. I am going to selectively show just one client. But this shows there are some other options here. Select one client, do a billing history, change the options, see what suits your needs best. But I am going to come up, I can actually do this report just for selected clients here, or if I come to filter by work code, I could run this report just for clients that had specific work codes or an individual work code in their WHIP currently. But I'm going to leave it for all work codes, come to selected clients, and I'm going to choose all rise, robes, and tassels here. That was the one we were looking at on the dashboard. And I'm going to print that now. And here is my preview. And again, I'm going to zoom that in a bit more. And at the top of my report here, I get a recap of my totals for this client. His unbilled slips, WHIP reserve, net unbilled, AR, expenses, total value. I can see here his last payment date and amount. Also at the top right here, this is an important figure here. Here is my year-to-date time at standard hourly rates, my adjustments year-to-date. So that is my billing adjustments year-to-date. That is how much I've written up or written down time for this client year-to-date. And my net time value year-to-date, including the adjustments. Now here are the last 4 invoices for this client. And I can see the date of the invoice number, WHIP that was cleared, any billing adjustment that was applied, expenses that were included, total invoice amount, a short note, and what type of invoice it was. Also, the information in bold here lets me see that's engagements that were invoiced on this particular invoice. So it lets me see how much of that was toward a particular engagement. A little bit further down the page here, I have my current WHIP for the client. This does give full detail of each time entry, including any text that was entered with the time entry. They are, the way I had it set up, sorted and subtotaled by work code here. There is a space here if you print out a hard copy of this to make a notation, bill this, hold this, that type thing. But you'll see here we have each work code subtotaled. Now here, this is actually the beginning, it's carried to the next page. These following time entries will be associated with this particular engagement. We did have an hour budget on this engagement, no dollar budget, and there has been $4,000 to date billed on this engagement. And if we go to the next page here, you can see the time entries for that engagement here at the top of the page. And again, sorted and subtotaled by work code. And we do have a subtotal for that engagement. Here is another engagement for this client, 32 hours budgeted, $4,360 budget toward the engagement, and no billing to date on it. And here are the time entries for it. And again, change the page. And then here the subtotal for that engagement, total hours and dollars for the report as a whole. The labor cost is optional if you want that to appear on your report. That is when you're setting up your staff, if you put in their hourly cost to their firm, that is their cost times their hours value backed out of the WHIP value. So time less cost. If there were unbilled time or expense entries, for this, they would be listed in detail here. Over under the aging here, and this again is an aging of the WHIP, and under that you would have a total time and expense figure. But that is the detailed WHIP report. So now let's close that.